Right, Ukraine, Dominique.
Anyway, yeah, on the topic of Ukraine, I have been critical of it, mostly because the conversation around Ukraine is completely one-sided. All of a sudden, you know, we're not allowed to talk about the history of Ukraine as a country, which may help us properly inform going forward what we do. I think our strategy of just throwing endless money at this regime, poo-pooing, that's the word I'm using today for some reason, diplomacy, and calling anyone who actually asked for some sort of diplomacy and an end to this madness a Putin apologist, I think that is a recipe for disaster. I even saw an article in The Telegraph today saying that the UK shouldn't be tempted to negotiate with Putin. Only in modern Britain would asking for negotiation during a war be controversial. And I wonder if those same people would have that opinion if it were British people having missiles rained down on them in this country. And I think the answer would be no.
Kevin Craig?
I just want to check, Dominic.
Don't go back to lockdowns.
No, I'm not.
Right,
you do think what Russia did was wrong, right? Do you think that?
So you've sort of alluded to what I already said there, this sort of insinuation that you have to be a Putin apologist to not agree with how this war is currently being handled. Of course, I think that invading a country is bad, but the idea that Putin just woke up one day and decided he wanted to create the Soviet Union 2.0 is just simply factually incorrect and historically inaccurate.
Right. We'll come back. I'm not totally sure. I think you're almost justifying what he's done there.
No, I'm not justifying
I'm hearing
it.
justification.
To say that it's the narrative is that he woke up one day and decided to put loads of soldiers at Ukraine's border and invade it because he wants the Soviet Union to be recreated, and not that NATO and Ukraine have been closer together, and not that America's been influencing Ukraine over the years, which is what Russia's had a problem with. That's just simply not correct, in my view.
So, yet again, I think there's not almost a single word you say that I can agree with. I think Russia invaded a sovereign country. The narrative on Ukraine is the one articulated by its president, its democratically elected president. Now, for those not watching, did you just cough there indicating disagreement that President Zelensky is democratically elected?
It's been long speculated before this war happened, before Zelensky turned into the second coming of Christ, that he does have some very dodgy financial links.
OK.
And that also linked to his presidential campaign.
So he wasn't democratically elected?
I'm not saying he wasn't, but I'm not saying he wasn't, but I'm just saying this idea that Zelensky should be listened to just because.
What are you going to do about it, Kevin?
Well, what we're going to do is, and again, another point that was made just then, Michelle, nobody is saying no to diplomacy, OK? No one is. There have been constant efforts. You look at our ally and friend, the French president, who's been constantly making efforts to talk to Russia. So it's a combination of maximising military aid to Ukraine and seeking, if possible, any possible way out. This country, Britain has always seen negotiation as a way to end conflicts. You look at what's happened in Africa, you look at Northern Ireland, it's not a stupid country. We know that negotiation is needed. Right. But there seem to be some people around, not a million miles away from me this evening, who do have quite a pro-Russia stance in this. And I disagree with that.
So what is it that I said that's the pro-Russian
You
stance?
infer that the president of Ukraine is not democratically elected. You inferred that one of the reasons that Ukraine was invaded by Russia is because NATO and Ukraine, in speech marks, got too close.
Well, that is actually true. That there was a promise made after the Cold War that NATO wouldn't expand eastward, and that promise has been broken. Just simply is. The idea that Ukraine should join NATO, that was something that the US promised Russia after the fall of the Soviet Union wouldn't happen. Then the US flagrantly was suggesting that that would happen. I think it was in 2021, Joe Biden met with Putin to try and get those assurances. He wasn't given them. This whole idea that Ukraine should also join the EU. Russia has said time and time again that it views that as a threat to its national security.
Nonsense,
so you can agree with it or disagree with it. But the idea that this has just come out of nowhere and Putin wants to create the Soviet Union, it's just factually incorrect. And the idea that we've actually tried to pursue diplomacy, I think, is also for the birds. When Zelensky himself has said is the only way he'll negotiate me is if Russia cedes all of its territory, including Crimea, which it acquired, yes, illegally in our eyes since 2014, it has to do that in order for them to have some sort of negotiation or settlement. That's not going to happen, which says to me that you're not looking for an actual diplomatic solution.
Final word to you.
Well, I think that my fellow guest stance this evening is just incredibly, when it comes to the invasion in Ukraine, the killing of innocent civilians is remarkably...
We're as much to blame for that as
finish.
Russia is.
You're talking over me. No, we're not. It is remarkably pro-Russian, and I think it goes against what the democratically elected president of Ukraine, supported by, I think, most people in this country, we've taken in well over 100,000 refugees. I find your stance impossible.
Well, yeah, I mean...
And you know what? That's absolutely fine. We don't all have to agree. We can respectfully disagree. I want to know your thoughts at home. I can see my inbox. And to say that you're divided on this is an understatement.